So after a while, you might notice some wear and tear on your molds. They're gonna be kind of like a whitish, lighter color inside your mold, and also around the edges, they'll kind of begin to bleach out. And that's how you know that your mold is getting older, and your pieces will begin to look foggier, even though the mold still looks shiny. And this is about the time that you will consider making another one. Now, you still can use this mold, but you will have to gloss your pieces to make them shiny again. I'm going to talk a little bit about my models that I make for my molds. These are just made from polymer clay, and they are coated with nail polish. So I've tried many different varnishes, and nail polish is one of the best. You are going to have to put a lot of coats on it to make it super shiny and as smooth as possible. And I find that these little imperfections and the smoothness doesn't really show up on the resin, and it's just super clear, and I make sure that it's not too thick and not too thin, so whatever you want to put in there has enough room to withstand the pendant inside the pendant and not poke up through the back. And I just leave the back unglossed, and just kind of be careful to make sure that it's buffed and ready to go inside your mold. And dry, of course. Our next step is to cut out a sheet of wax paper. It's just going to be big enough for our mold. And for my mold, I just use an empty to-go container from my favorite pho place. And I like the size of it because you can make a really big mold with a lot of little pieces in there, and you can conserve silicone that way. The next thing I do is take a Sharpie, and with your wax paper underneath, I just go inside the mold and draw a circle to know where the outside of my mold will stop. So using my old mold as a sort of a reference guide, I'm going to take all my pieces and fill them up in my circle, making sure that they're not touching, that there's enough of space where the silicone can flow down into and create a wall, and make sure that when you're filling up your mold, you're not running into any of the other mold pieces. So I went ahead and arranged these in the best way I could to maximize space. And it's a little different than my old one, but that's okay, because these long ones, honestly, I have a lot of them already, so I don't need more of them. And yeah, I'm going to now put down the double-sided tape on the entire circumference or area of the circle. One thing I like to do is take a picture of this arrangement I have here, so that I can refer to it when I have to put all my pieces back. So now I'm going to use some double-sided tape and just piece by piece cover the entire area of the circle with double-sided tape. And you want to make sure that all the wrinkles underneath are kind of leveled out as much as possible, because the mold material will run underneath these and create a hassle for you. So I've got my template here, and it's gonna rain, guys, just so you know. And I'm going to try and copy this as best I can. What you're going to do now is put your little container back over. Make sure none of the pieces are hitting the side of this. because it'll create a hole in the mold and your resin will just spill out the side, and that is no good. So it looks like it'll fit fine, and the next step will be to turn this around carefully. Oh, I said carefully. Jeez. Okay, let's try this again. Maybe hold on to it when you flip it around. Dang it. All right. And what you're gonna do is take your double-sided tape and make sure that it's making contact with all the edges of your mold pieces. Now that you have better adhesion, just go ahead and make sure they're all firmly attached. To the back. So after you get your container back around your pieces, take your glue gun and you're going to seal the container to the wax paper and make sure that there are no gaps at all, because your mold, your silicone, will run out the bottom of your mold. So this is the silicone I use. It's Smooth-On's Mold Star 15 Slow, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio by weight or volume. And the pot life is about 50 minutes and the cure time is 4 hours. So I think that's, they have a faster one, thus the name Slow, but I like this one because it gives me enough time to do what I need to do without rushing. And with this stuff you really want to make sure that it's mixed well. So these containers are pretty handy. I use them as mixing containers, and I think they just have them at Home Depot. And I'm gonna go ahead and just do 4 of A and 4 of B, and we'll see if that covers the pieces. Yeah. And this stuff, like I said, you want to mix really well. Got to scrape the sides and the bottom and just go to town. So after you stir your silicone, you want to start to pour. And when you begin to pour, you want to get a pour from high up. And as you can see, there are little bubbles. And this specific formula is really good about degassing or degassing. I don't know how you say that. But as you can see, the bubbles are already kind of rising to the surface and popping. And what happens is when you pour it from higher up, more bubbles will begin to pop before they hit your mold. And the thinner the stream, the more bubbles you will pop. So here we go. And here's a cool little tip. After you're done, just keep your stir in there and all the extra silicone will drip to the bottom, and then you can just pull out your stir with the rest of the excess of the silicone. And make sure you're wearing gloves. This stuff probably isn't good for you. So make sure that your mold material is all safely inside. And the next step is I'm going to actually move this to the center of the room where I know it's level, and you wait for 4 hours. It is now the next day, and you can see that the mold has solidified. The first thing that I'm going to do is remove the glue and the paper from the mold. You'll probably have some of the tape still stuck to it, and you're going to carefully remove whatever tape or paper is left. So the next step will be to pop out your mold from the container surrounding it, and it should just easily, careful not to remove any of the pieces yet. There you go. And now what I like to do is grab my X-Acto knife and get rid of the messy edges around this mold. And now the next step is to carefully, with your X-Acto knife, because these all won't be level, just go around and edge each piece and make sure that the top of the edge of the molds are going to be smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Nothing like a fresh mold. And you will notice that there are some rough pieces around, and I just take my fingers and kind of pinch them out because you don't want those getting in your resin. So another thing that I do is that there's a, if you can see, there's a lip that has formed around the mold. I like to make sure that the mold isn't bowing. So I will go ahead and cut around that edge and make sure that it lays flat. Now look at that. You have a all original mold that no one else can replicate. Words. And yeah. So this is a nice little tip. When you store your models, because they are glazed with nail polish, if they are stored together, they can stick. Surfaces can actually stick together and ruin your nice shiny finish that you have worked so hard to achieve. So I actually just take these packing pillow things, and you just take it and rip it, and then just cut across, and it actually creates a nice little baggie that you can go ahead and drop each individual piece in, because you don't want them to touch when you store them. And just roll them up and toss them into your storage box. And that's a great way to upcycle and recycle your packing materials. That no one else can replicate, or that no one else can replicate. Why can't I talk?